Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all of the praises and the glory to the Most High and the Son, Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushua, Ba'ashim Rakah Kodash, and double honors to the apostles of the great millstone, and as well as giving the salutations thereof towards the Yakim, and honors to you brothers out there that's forwarding this truth. Shalom to the brothers and the sisters that are heeding to these lessons that we give unto you, and that are growing thereby ultimately. So I want to jump right into this. As you can see, this is from the Daily Mail.co.uk, and this reads: woman who married a tech genius reveals her husband implanted a chip in her hand which serves as a key to their mansion. A woman who was married to a tech genius has revealed that her husband implanted a chip in her hand which serves as a key to their lavish mansion, leaving many people on the web intrigued. Burgundy Waller from Las Vegas got a tiny chip put inside her hand back in June 2020, which made it so that she can unlock the doors and drawers throughout her home by simply touching them. Burgundy, now known as the Chip Girl online, has created quite a stir on the internet, becoming a viral TikTok sensation and gaining more than 3 million followers for sharing some of the things that the chip can do. So this is a TikTok video, but these are just pictures, as Daily Mail Online only has. But what I just read kind of reminds me of Revelations 13 and verse 14, which is I want to get right into reading, as it reads: and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. And that's why she was able to be attracting so many people on TikTok, which a lot of people are on TikTok, especially Generation Z, and many were wooed and became followers over her because they were intrigued by the miracle of this technology. Let's look up the word miracle in the Greek, or miracles, which is Samion, if I'm correct on that. Let's play this.
Strong's G 4592 Samion.
So let's get to the point. Biblical usage B: a sign, prodigy, portent, i.e. an unusual occurrence, transcending the common course of nature. And yeah, it's unusual that you can just swipe your hand to open doors. And I mean, there's so many articles and videos showing people swiping their hands to open doors to their cars, their houses, and you have people that are paraplegic or just all around paralyzed that are able to do things being paralyzed with the brain chip. For example, this is another intriguing miracle where you have a man that I found here. A paralyzed man uses microchip implanted in the brain to drive racing car. So I want to show you this video without further ado. This is a miracle, which is what the beast is showing you, so that people can be wooed into taking it. As it is written, many were deceived by the miracle. I'm roughly paraphrasing what I just read in Revelations 13 and 14. So anyway, let's play this.
Nothing out of the ordinary. Neither are the skills and intense focus required to make it out unscathed.
It's an amazing experience.
This week, German Aldana Zuniga made it all look effortless, despite not touching the throttle a single time.
Since my accident, I don't have no mobility below my waist, so this is my first time driving the car again.
9 years after that life-altering car wreck, Zuniga is using his thoughts to drive. It's a technological breakthrough pioneered by a team led by Colorado neurosurgeon Dr. Scott Fauci.
We're really proud of what he's done.
For more than a year, the group has worked so Zuniga can communicate between a microchip on his brain and a computer in the car.
The computer can pick that up, that particular electronic fingerprint, and feed that to the race car.
Zuniga can now use his mind to move the car in this specialized helmet to steer it, a task once unthinkable, now possible with focus and practice.
To be in it and just watch how you go through the track smoothly and it responds to what you think. It's just incredible.
So too are the possibilities for this technology later on.
We can use this potentially for driving an electric wheelchair, a golf cart, control a robotic arm. Once we develop that science can be used for all types of systems.
It's a finish line Zuniga can't wait to help cross.
Technology is advancing, so we gotta help put our part in it and make it become available for everyone.
And that's exactly what's going to happen. The technology that they're promoting, which is miraculous to a degree, will be omnipotent, which means all around, because Esau is setting up a world now, a new world order, which is also known as the Great Reset, where a world is going to be based on you being controlled and monitored and measured by this Charagma. Okay, so as you saw, which is a miracle of a man which is paralyzed, driving a race car with just using his thoughts, so he could drive the car, thinking of thinking of however he gets the car to move, and he's able to move the car left and right by turning his head. So again, that's a miracle which is unusual, an unusual occurrence transcending the common course of nature. And this is how the people are being wooed by this technology. And that's why people by choice have gotten this implantable device into them to this very day. But eventually, as the brother said, it's going to be all around, in my words. Now, because as it is written, let's read this in verse 16. And he calls of all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or on their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell, say that he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So there you go. So this thing is going to be eventually to the point where you're going to have it. And if you don't have it, then you won't be able to do anything. You won't be able to take care of your children. You won't be able to take care of yourself. If you're by yourself, you won't be able to do the everyday things that you do in your day-to-day living. Okay, so that's how they're going to cause as many to receive that implantable device. All right, that's how they're going to do it. They're first showing you the power behind this technology, which is miraculous, as I'm going to say again, to get you wooed and hip to it. But then eventually there's going to be the thing that you're going to have to get for your everyday life. That's why they're starting to promote it now like they never did before. Especially the brothers in the States. I know that they're seeing a lot of videos as of recently about this technology, because this is going to be the new way of life overall eventually. So now what I want to do is I want to read a couple of verses in the book of Revelations. Well, to just get to the point, I could start with reading Revelation 16 and verse 14, then 19 and verse 20. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of the Most High Almighty. And the beast was taken, Revelations 19 and 20, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet, that which wrought miracles before him, with which he deceiveth them that have received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. And these both were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. So this devil is going to use all that he can use, the techniques to woo people to get that implantable device, whether he's going to use it as a trend. He's going to push it as a trend, and then eventually he's going to force it down the throat of many people, having them to believe that they have no choice but to take it, unless they won't be able to eat or do anything that they've done before. All right. But those that take the mark, as it is written, and this just goes to prove that Because you have this individual in IUIC saying that you can possibly repent after taking the mark. But this tells you, let me read this. And the beast was taken with him, the false prophet that wrought the miracles before him, with which he deceived them that received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. And these both were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. So that's the consequence, as it is written, of those that are infidels to the faith and unaware, and they receive the mark. And this is what's going to happen to them. They're going to be burning with the brimstones. Now, the physical brimstones happened to, let me reiterate. The physical brimstones are stones that came down on Sodom and Gomorrah. And, but in this Sodom and Gomorrah, which is what we're in, the brimstones are going to be the missiles, the wastes to destroy, which the Lord is going to guide men and use these things, as it is written, that the Lord pondereth the hearts and he control of the hearts of kings. I'm roughly paraphrasing the scripture. So the Heavenly Father's will be fulfilled, will be done. Okay, many will take this implantable device, and they're going to be taken in a great number in this nuclear destruction. That's going to be bringing the lake of fire, and as well as the missiles are going to be the brimstones to bring that lake of fire. Okay. And this ties into a video that I could do probably sometime later, or maybe even today even. We'll see, through the Spirit, if it be the Lord's will. Now, back during the times of the beginning in the book of Genesis, a period of time that the prophet Noah lived in, a time where men became great in wickedness, to the point where the Lord set up a prophet such as Noah to warn the people of a flood which was going to come. And that flood was going to wipe a lot of those people off the face of the earth. And that happened. They became the sacrifice, and they all went before the Father. And he survived, and his 3 sons, and many those that followed after him, and took heed to his ways. And then the 3 sons that he had repopulated the planet again. So another cleansing is coming, and it's going to be by fire. And I have to read 2 Peter 3. And we'll begin by reading. We're going to get to the point. Verse 7. But the heavens and the earth which are now by the same word are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. And speaking of what happened in the book of Genesis, the Lord brought forth a bow, which is the rainbow, which is to signify that the Lord will no longer flood the earth again. So this time now, the Lord is going to bring another wave of destruction by using fire, as it is written, but the heavens and the earth which are now by the same word are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. So the Lord is going to cleanse the earth by fire, nuclear fire, which will eviscerate everything and any element which is in the way of it, including the people that have received the mark and have acknowledged the beast overall. Okay. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long suffering to usward, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance, which the all is referencing to the elect in these times, because it is written that 2 parts shall be cut off and die, and they're going to take that mark, and they're going to be consumed in the second death. Okay, which is that second cleansing, which is what the Lord is going to come with, as I've expounded upon what that is. Verse 10 now, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat, and the earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversations and godliness, looking for and hastening unto the coming of the day of the Most High, Yahweh Bashmi Al-Shai, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. And nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. And that is the ultimate goal of the Heavenly Father and his only begotten Son, is to establish a new heavens and a new earth. So the old heavens and the old earth, which are now, has to be physically, overally destroyed to set up this righteous kingdom, and the kingdom which would be established by the first Saint, the begotten Spirit, which is Yahweh Shai. And this kingdom is going to be an everlasting kingdom in righteousness forever and ever. So that is the goal. So a new wave is coming, and the wave is going to be coming out of those modern day brimstones, which is those nuclear missiles. And therefore the evil and the wicked among us will be dissolved in that. And as well as even these devils in their power structure. And it's going to be a new beginning, which entails Jacob's rule, and their rulership will be based on righteousness. So that's all I have to say. And in me saying that, speaking about the missiles and the element which the Lord is going to use, which is going to come out of those missiles, the fire, this now leads me to the second segment concerning what's going on with Russia, with Ukraine and all of that, which seems to be intensifying. So with that, I close. Shalom. The Russian president has declared Russian ownership of 4 regions of Ukraine and threatened Ukraine's supporters in a 37-minute speech railing against the West. And I did see a little bit of this. And what I'll do is I'll post this video of this speech that I saw on post-production sometime around in this this lesson that I'm doing. So it goes as far as to read: Russian President Vladimir Putin declares 4 regions of Ukraine will become part of Russia and vows to defend them with all the means at our disposal, in a speech condemned by the international community on Friday. And I want the Kyiv government and their real bosses in the West to hear me, residents of Donetsk, Luhansk, and Zaporizhzhia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Kherson are becoming our citizens forever, said Mr. Putin in an address at St. George's Hall at the Kremlin. Mr. Putin cited recent referendums in the territory of eastern and southern Ukraine in a desire of millions to return to their historic motherland. The referendum has been derided as a sham by Ukraine and its allies, with Western leaders vowing not to recognize the results. In a 37-minute tirade, the Russian president attacked the West and NATO as a neo-colonialist system, which the term neo-colonialism means new colonial, looking for a chance to break up Russia and vow to protect the newly acquired territory with all the means at our disposal. And what he's saying about the neo-colonialism system, because before NATO was even established, you had the USSR that was established from the 1920s even unto the 1950s during the time of Stalin. And then onwards, and then until 1991, it broke up. But I'll touch on that later on as well, again, dealing with the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter, when I get there. So anyway, looking for a chance to break up Russia and vow to protect the newly acquired territories with all the means at our disposal. He lamented the breakup of the USSR in 91 and held a chance to restore unity between Russia and the territory it is laying claim to. Mr. Putin also raised the prospect of a ceasefire of Ukraine, urging Kyiv to return to negotiations, in a move that was rejected outright by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who said Ukraine will not conduct any negotiations with Russia as long as Putin is the president of the Russian Federation. Mr. Zelensky has vowed that all occupied territories will be reclaimed, and much of the territory Russia is claiming remains in Russia's hands. And this is in relation to the original reason, which is God's will, prophecy. All right. And according to the book of Ezekiel 38, they're going to all come back together, fighting the allies of their enemies. All right. As you can see, prophecy about Gog and the future invasion of Israel. And I mean, like, you know, that's a lesson for another time. But what I want to focus on is the building up of the USSR, which is in this prophecy, which would happen. So this is Ezekiel 38, verse 1. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog and the land of Magog and the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. These were Japhites that ruled in the a land which is called Turkey, and Meshech is let me see, I think it's Asia Minor, if I'm correct. Tubal is Asia Minor. Meshech has got to be, let me see something real quick. Meshech is from the Hebrew word mashah or mashak, which means to draw out. Yeah, which is from the border of Armenia, right? As it reads here, the descendants of Meshech often mentioned in the connection with Tubal, Magog, and other northern nations, including the Moshi, a people on the border of Kushis and Armenia, which Armenia was also a part of the Soviet Union, one of those nations. Okay, and Tubal, which is Asia Minor, which was called Asia Minor in the New Testament, which is known as Turkey, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, which the chief prince in this case would be Putin. He's the chief prince of all of that region, which he's going to reformulate back together. As he said in the speech, that they're going to use all of their means, and I'm roughly paraphrasing now, to protect their people from the Western powers. So this would have to be happening. Okay. And say, Thus saith the Lord, behold, thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, and the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. And I will bring thee forth and all of thine army, horses and horsemen, and all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, and even a great company with buckler and shields, and all of them handling swords. So let me read this again, and I'm going to break this down bit by bit. Once again, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. So in other words, the way I'm going to break this down and saying is, the animal symbol of Russia is the bear, right? And a bear is a carnivorous animal out of many, a carnivorous beast. And every carnivorous beast, they have hook-like teeth from the side of their jaw, as you can see. And what I'll do is I'll post it on post-production. If you look at the bear's teeth from the side of its jaw, it's hook-like, just like every carnivorous beast. It is. So it just represents, it just symbolizes, excuse me, let me use another word. It just symbolizes that they're going to regain power by their military might, being that they're going to all be connected together as they once were back during the time of the Soviet Union, during the time of Joseph Stalin. All right. So it reads, And I will bring thee forth in all of thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with buckler and shield, and all of them handling swords. And these are the additional nations that are going to be supporting them, allied with them. But this right here is referencing the USSR being formulated back all over again, which broke out at the end of the Cold War in the beginning of the 1990s. So now let's go back and read this. Yeah, so anyway, he lamented the breakup of the USSR in 1991 and held a chance to restore unity between Russia and the territories it is laying to claim to. Yeah, I've read that already. Let's go to, yeah, so he reads, he says, Mr. Putin also attacked Western cultures through references to outright Satanism and transgender people. Do we want our children to be offered operations on sex changes? He asked in the speech that was attended by members of Russian military and political elite. The crowd stood for a moment of silence for Russia's force fighting in the region, followed by a standing ovation. So in him saying this, he's basically preparing all of these people that were there that we have to stand on our own, and we have to prepare to fight, if possible, against the NATO alliance, because if these people take over, then we're going to become likened unto these people. So now Putin feels as though he has to alert his people, because eventually this particular situation in Ukraine can intensify to a war, okay, which is in the book of Ezekiel 38. But I just want to stop at, actually, you know what, I can continue to read all the way down to verse 6. Skip a verse 6. Gomer and all of his bands and the house of Togarmah, which is Armenia, of the north quarters, and all his bands and many people with thee, which the north quarters. If you go further, if you go a bit forward, you're going to find Armenia is like the beginning part of Turkey. But if you go further in, that's right there, smack dab in Turkey. And all of the north quarters as well, which is referencing Georgia and all of those 15 republics which made up the Soviet Union, and all of his bands and many people with thee. All right. Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, and thou and all of thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou guard unto them. So there you go. So all of this has been happening ever since 2014, when Obama was in office in America. And ever since that point, Russia has been supplying missiles to different nations among their allies. S-300s, S-400s all over the place. Okay. And the whole Ukrainian situation begun. And speaking of 2014, that's when the whole Ukrainian situation erupted. But the media makes out that this is just a current situation that started as of recently, but it's all been about since 2014. We're talking what, almost 9 years ago, 9 years ago, something like that. Anyway, so there you go. But I want to go back up and read verse 4 again. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, and even a great company with buckler and shield, and all of them handling swords. Okay, so these are the nations that are going to be in league with Russia, including their original partners. Now what I want to do is I want to tie this into the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter, and read verse, let me see if I could find that particular verse. Here we have it right here, verse 10. So this reads, we'll begin by reading verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war and wake up the mighty men, and let all of the men of war draw near, and let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears, and let the weak say, I am strong. And what does this mean? So now I'm going to go into the history of how Russia was once a poorer country in comparison to the West, especially during the time of Joseph Stalin, once again, as I'm going to touch on. And during the time of Joseph Stalin, which he reigned from 1921 to the early 1950s, if I'm correct. And during the time of Stalin, his plan was to enhance the economy, and they did to a degree, but they still was somewhat inferior economically in comparisons to the West, because their economy was more based on agriculture. So as you fast forward from the 1950s onwards, now Russia has become a lot more greater militarily and as well as economically. And even during the 1990s, I would say maybe around the time of 98, they weren't really doing so well even at that time. They had more poverty than they did before at the time. All right, but the point of the matter is that nowadays Russia is greater and mightier and stronger economically, and is much more militarily. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, and these are all agricultural tools. And let the weak say that I am strong. So now they have the weapons of destruction to defend themselves. I'm going to read this again, and I'm going to start from the first verse, and we're going to break all of this down. So this is Joel 3 and verse 1. The nations that will be judged, right? This is Joel 3 and verse 1. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. In other words, the captivity is going to fall away from us. That's what it means, that he will bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. Verse 2, I will also gather all nations, and I will bring them into the valley of Jehoshaphat. Now, Jehoshaphat was a king in Israel, and during the time of Jehoshaphat, there was a war that was being prepared, which was among the Ammonites, the Moabites, and the Edomites. And what they wanted to do is to conquer the Israelites at the time. But what happened was there was an ambushment, and they wound up knocking into each other, fighting one another. And by the time they all got done fighting one another, which the Israelites, they were hidden in this this area where there was nothing more than trees around, the woods, as I can remember reading the story. And all of them nations that was supposed to come up against Jerusalem, they wound up attacking each other and killing one another. And after the war was said and done between them nations, the Israelites stepped aside and saw nothing more than dead bodies, basically. So the same thing is going to happen in these times. A war is going to be fought, and it's going to be a nuclear war among these nations. And this is a war that we don't have to fight at all. And this is going to be simultaneously our salvation. So when these nations get done destroying themselves, that's when the Messiah is going to make a second return. And that's how the kingdom is going to be set up. And this is going to be a way of the Lord punishing these nations. Hence is Jehoshaphat represents, or it really means, let me use another word, it means the Lord's judgment, Yahweh Shaphat, which means the Most High's judgment. Because ultimately, back during the time of the king of Jehoshaphat, the Lord was basically judging the nations for wanting to come up against Jerusalem. So because of these nations, of what they did to Jerusalem in these times, beginning with the transatlantic slave trade and all of that, now the Lord is going to punish these nations with this third world nuclear war. Okay, so that's all I wanted to really speak about right there and there. So we're going to continue on. And will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations in part of my land. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given the boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. Yea, and what have you to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all of the coast of Palestine, that's the Hamites? And will you render me a recompense? And if you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head, because you have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that you might remove them far from their border. Now, if you look up this term Grecian in the Old Testament, it's going to lead you to the word Japhet or Yapah, which the original Grecians were the Japhites, but this is referencing to the Edomites because they took over the Japhites and they became the Grecians. So when you put it into context, it would make sense because we was never sold. The Israelites, we were never sold to the people of Japhet, which the people of Japhet today are dwelling in the Samoan Islands, the Fiji Islands, and the South Pacific Ocean region, as well as towards Thailand even. Okay, and Indonesia. Those are those Japhites. Never in the history of time we were sold to those people. So the people that we were sold to in history were Edomites, which they became the Grecians. That you might remove them far from their border, behold, I will raise them out of the place whither you have sold them, and I will return your payback upon your own head. That's what the word recompense means. I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabeans, to a people afar off, and the Lord have spoken it. So after this war is fought among these nations are going to go into slavery, especially the Edomites, for doing what they did to us. And we're going to sell them into the hands of the Sabeans, which the Sabeans are another form of Hamites, which are descendants of Cush, from a man by the name of Ra'amah, if I'm correct. And they're going to be the taskmasters to a people far off from the Lord have spoken it, and proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, which is what we're doing. Prepare war and wake up the mighty men, and let all of the men of war draw near, and let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, and let the weak say that I'm strong, as I've already expounded upon. All right. So this is the time that we're living in. We're living in the time of the book of Joel, the book of Revelations, which is what I have Revelations, the 9th chapter, that I'll get into later on. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to go back to reading Ezekiel once again, because the thing with Turkey right now are experiencing inflation in their country. And I have another article in reading that you have this guy here that says, Jürgen Trittin, that says that it's time to sanction Turkey. So if Turkey is sanctioned eventually, as I'm going to shortly say, then they're going to obviously take sides, because they're going to have to keep their country afloat. So they're obviously going to take sides with Russia. That's what they're going to do. So I'm going to get back to this later on, but let me just read Revelations, the 9th chapter now. In the book of Revelations, the 9th chapter, because the land of Jehoshaphat, the area of Jehoshaphat, is going to be around this region, which is where the great river Euphrates is at, which is where you have the 4 angels that are going to be responsible for hurting the earth. All right. Now, when you read the book of Revelations, the 7th chapter, it speaks about the 4 winds, and those 4 angels that are around the river Euphrates. Like I said, they're going to be responsible for allowing these missiles to be shot forth among these other nations. After the elect is sealed, then the missiles are going to start flying. So now let's read this. Revelations 9 and 13 will begin here. And the 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar which is before the Most High, saying to the 6th angel which had the trumpet, loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the 3rd part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them, which is referencing to the missiles. Okay, these ain't referencing to the chariots or anything other. It's referencing to the missiles that these nations have. And they're not going to shoot those missiles until the angels persuade them or control them to do so. Going back to the book of Revelation, the 7th chapter, like I mentioned, until the elect is sealed. Revelation 71. After these things, I saw the 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth. See, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the winds should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And what is this winds? Because the winds are blowing right now on the earth. So what winds is this talking about? Let's get the book of Isaiah, I believe it is, or Jeremiah. Jeremiah 51 verse 1. Salakia. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I will raise up against Babylon and against them that dwell in the midst of them that rise up against me a destroying wind. So that's what the wind is in Revelations, the 7th chapter, the destroying wind, which the angels have control of. And that destroying wind is going to come out of those nuclear missiles, which is going to cause great devastations all around the planet, knocking out all of the elements on the earth. Okay. So, yeah. So what I want to do is I want to get into this article over here, because according to the book of Ezekiel 38, which Tubal is, which is where, is one of the people, or is one of the men which came out of Japhet, and he had access of, Turkey. So in this time, Turkey is going to have to join up with the bear, okay, which is Russia, and as well as their partners, the Soviet Union. The EU must very seriously consider taking economic measures and sanctioning Turkey, and the head of the foreign policy in Germany Green Party, Jürgen Tridden, unequivocally states in an interview with Catherine Merini. The influential official in one of the country's co-governing parties stresses that the West needs to make sure that Turkey understands that it needs Europe and NATO, whose interests it regularly undermines. As for the energy crises, Tridden believes that a full transition to a renewable is the only way forward, and even dismisses the use of nuclear power. On the matter of the ongoing war in Ukraine, he says that the EU needs to increase support for Kyiv following Russia President Vladimir Putin's recent escalation. Let's go all the way down here. Turkey regularly undermines the common interest of the EU and NATO, and it undermines the sanctions policy against Russia, acts against international law in Syria, prevents the control of the UN armed embargo against Libya, and violates the sovereign rights of Greece, a NATO ally. An EU member, President Erdogan is solely concerned with his domestic political advantage and ignores alliance interests. However, since there are no sanctions mechanisms within NATO, nor is it possible to expel a member, the EU must very seriously consider taking economic measures and sanctioning Turkey. Turkey needs the European markets, and it needs the alliance with NATO, and this must be made very clear. Okay, to it. So there you go. So in saying all of that, really what I should have read to you first is this article over here, and showing you that Turkey is in an inflationary time, which, as you can see, surges up to 83%. So Turkey isn't doing so good already. And then you have, like I've just read to you, on how the EU wants to seek to sanction it. So if Turkey is sanctioned, and how can their economy flow, and as well as this problem of inflation? So if they're going to be sanctioned, then Turkey is automatically going to swing to the other side, and they're going to have to swing to whom they're closer to with, which they're closer to one of the allies or a member of the Soviet Union, which is Armenia, and that's who they're going to have to be in league with eventually, which is in relation to Ezekiel 34, because during the time of the 40s, or after the Second World War, you had the formulation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and that was all because what you had you had the rising up of power of the Soviet Union, and they were afraid that eventually they would dominate the world under communism. So this is why the North Atlantic Treaty Organization did what they did years later to formulate themselves to mitigate the power of the Soviet Union at the time. Okay, and in that time you had Turkey, which was supposed to be in league with the Soviet Union. They took a side to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Hungary, the Czech Republic, and many others that I didn't name. All right. So there you go. So now let's read this. The transport, food, housing sectors have seen the biggest rise in prices. Independently experts, the Inflation Research Group estimates the annual rate is actually 186.27%. Last year, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan took to the unorthodox step of the cutting interest rates to try to boost the economy. Most central banks raised interest rates to fight inflation. The transport sector saw the sharpest increase in annual prices at 117.66%, followed by food and non-alcoholic drinks at 93%. Mr. Erdogan has described Mr. Erdogan has described the interest rates as the mother and father of all evil, and his economic policies, including intervening in foreign exchange markets. Last year's cut in interest rates from 19% to 14% has led to a fall in the value of the Turkish lira, which means it costs more for the country to import goods from abroad, and the lira meanwhile hits a new record low of 18.56 against the US dollar. See that? So they're doing terrible. Doing terrible. And then you have the possibility of them being sanctioned or possibly expelled. So what are the Turkish going to do? What is their government going to do? They're going to have to side with Russia, which is in league with Ezekiel 38 in verse 4. Verse 3, excuse me, because Vladimir Putin is that chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. And Tubal is going to have to sway back to the side of the Soviet Union, which they were once a part of anyway. Side right along with Armenia. Okay. So that's it that I have, man. That's all I have to really say on this. Hopefully this was edifying overall, and you can clearly see that eventually everything's coming together concerning prophecy wise, and that this place is getting ready to be destroyed, man. Because it reads, and I want to read one last scripture as well, which I believe is somewhere in Jeremiah. And let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so let me see if I could do this instead. Yeah, let me end it off with this scripture right here. This is Jeremiah 50 verse 3. Declare ye among the nations, and publish, and set up a standard, and publish, and conceal not, saying, Babylon is taken, Bel is confounded, and Merodach is broken into pieces, and her idols are confounded, and her images are broken into pieces. Now, the way I'm going to go into this, now originally, the Medo-Persian Empire took over Babylon. And this is what Jeremiah was prophesying about, that would be the case, that the Medo-Persian Empire would take over Babylon and destroy all of their gods and everything else within it. So what I'm going to now compare this to is in modern times, because the modern day Medes are indeed those Russians, also known as Gog and Magog. And in this prophecy, in verse 3 to be exact now, for out of the north there cometh up a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein, and they shall remove, and they shall depart, both man and beast. So there you go. So that's what's going to happen. America, which is known as modern day, or old daughter of Babylon, old daughter of Babylon, is sanctioned to go up against Russia and their allies, which makes up the Soviet Union, and all of those which were in league with America will rise up against America, turn on her, and burn her with fire, pursuant to the book of Revelations, the 17th chapter. And by the way, America has no defense mechanisms. They don't have no defense, period. You know, their military is destroyed in many ways that I can explain. I mean, we talk about how, you know, these soldiers are just not prepared because of this whole LGBT thing, which we can include that as an issue. And as well as their nuclear power isn't all the way trustworthy. It's faulty. Their weapons are faulty as well. And they're using old ass technology going all the way back to the Second World War. Okay, and then you have this confused, mentally ill prime minister of the country, or president of the United States for that matter, that can't even finish his sentences or even know where he's going when he ends his speech. So America's already out and through, man. America is sanctioned to be destroyed, as we've been speaking about for as long as we can remember, beginning with the elder apostles of the Great Millstone. We've been saying this all of the time. As time continues to progress, it's looking more and more and more that it's definitely going to be the case. Okay? So that's all I have to say with this. And with that, I'm closing. Shalom.